And we are officially starting. And this morning is, July 3rd, 2021. And our theme this morning is the integration of our trunk and our limbs being our arms and legs. And we're going to do the integration for standing and walking. And this is class 1 of 2. I can't imagine I can get everything done in one class, so I'm not going to rush or try. So this will be the first of 2 classes about integrating the full body into standing and walking. It's always good to have, we'll start in floor movement. Let me go to, I need to go to participants list and mute everyone. I haven't done that. Mute all. And I mute all. Oh, but I didn't undo the box. Does that matter? Okay, wait, I have to go back and do it again. Mute all. Okay, so I unchecked the allow participant. Okay, and then I mute all. Wrong order. Order is very important. Okay. And I think that's all I have to do to get started. Okay, props. You'll want to, well, you might want to be in a chair now. It's up to you. I'm going to do a bit of an introduction. Instead of showing slides today for the anatomy part, because I want to get to the standing and moving activities, standing and walking activities, I'm not going to lose myself in all the anatomy, which of course I love, but I'll do some of the anatomy, of course, as we go along. Next class, when we continue into class 2, I'll decide if I want to do slides or not. After floor movement, we'll do floor movement, and then we're going to go back and forth between standing and walking, but you'll want a chair at the ready because sometimes you'll want to sit in a chair for a bit of an interlude and for me to explain the next activity we're going to do in standing and walking. That's certainly up to you. Now, glasses. When we do floor movement, people take their glasses off, empty your pockets so you can really move freely, belts off like that. But when you're standing and walking, if you're used to standing and walking with your glasses on, you're probably going to want to do those activities with your glasses on. So you want your glasses to be able to go on and off, and when they're off, in a safe place. And because we're going to do standing and walking, we want to have bare feet or socks, because part of what we're going to be doing is paying attention to our feet and our balance at different times. So back to our theme of integrating trunk and limbs for standing and walking. Walking is the quintessential human movement. We evolved for walking, and walking requires our full body. Every part of us working together as a coordinated fluid whole is necessary for walking. Normal adult walking is cross-lateral or contralateral. What does that mean? Well, glibly we say for contralateral, it means the opposite arm and leg are working together for the same movement. So my right arm and my left leg would be coming forward at the same time. My right leg and left arm would be in the backward position. So glibly we say, oh, opposite arm and leg are working together. However, when we say that, we're leaving out the whole role of the trunk, the spine, the upper trunk, which is the rib cage, the somatic center in the center of the trunk, and the pelvis, which is the lower rib cage. So there's also another word called homolateral, or that's walking, ipsilateral. Ipsilateral means same side. Contralateral, opposite shoulder and hip. Ipsilateral, when you're doing movement all on the same side. So in the walking pattern, when you are walking contralaterally, if you look at just your right side, your right arm, shoulder, and hip, leg are doing opposite movements. That's the contralateral movement, just looking at one side. So you need to kind of understand cross diagonal patterns and same side patterns both contributing to contralaterality. I hope as we do our activities, this becomes clearer and clearer. Let me see, back to really understanding that walking is not just arms and legs. As we've learned in previous classes, your full trunk and spine support, organize, and coordinate what the limbs are doing. And when you leave out the trunk, or you hardly move your trunk when you're walking, what you are actually doing is contracting muscles to keep your trunk still. And so you're actually practicing imbalance. You're actually practicing compensation patterns. You're not using your full body. So hopefully the sub patterns we do today will help you integrate and understand that. So we're definitely going to use our trunk and understand our trunk in contralateral walking. Now, what's really interesting about walking is mostly unconscious. We just decide to go somewhere and we walk there, we walk to the kitchen, we walk to the bathroom, we take a walk outside, we just walk. In general, we don't think very much about walking. If something is in our path, and we pay attention, and we might add a little bit of consciousness to our walking, but basically walking is unconscious, and it is run by a part of the brain called the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is a very important part of the overall motor system. And the cerebellum is responsible for, among other things, learned motor programs, coordination, and balance. Examples of learned motor programs are riding a bike, swimming, eating, speaking, getting up and down from a chair, typing on a keyboard. Most of our everyday mundane activities, they're all learned motor programs we've done over and over and forever and ever. So our cerebellum handles all that automatic stuff. It's wonderful, it's unconscious, and it keeps us going. But for all the functions the cerebellum does, it cannot correct inefficient and faulty movement patterns. It cannot, the cerebellum cannot correct inefficient and faulty movement patterns. For us to improve faulty and inefficient movement patterns, we must use our voluntary motor cortex and sensory cortex. That's up here in the cortex of the brain, almost from ear to ear. The motor cortex is in the front, and the sensory cortex is right behind it. And in somatic movement, because we're being conscious and aware of how we're moving, we are, as much as possible, moving from our motor and sensory cortices. Using our voluntary, this is voluntary motor cortex, voluntary sensory cortex. Using our voluntary motor and sensory cortex gives us the opportunity to upgrade and replace faulty movement patterns for more efficient, well-organized movement. And more efficient, well-organized movement means less pain, more ease. It means greater flexibility. It means greater strength. It means greater vitality. And it really increases our range of comfortable activities. And we're often able to go back to activities we haven't been able to do for a long time. To best utilize the motor and sensory cortex of our brain, we follow our somatic guidelines, and we move voluntarily, or as much voluntarily as we can. And this means we mostly use our technique of pandiculation, which I'll describe as we go along, or sometimes we go into a slow flow, but we're doing it slowly so we can still pay attention. Pandiculation is the most voluntary. A slow flow can still be quite voluntary, but we're kind of schmoozing into one movement into another. And if we particularly pay attention to the transitions, we can stay quite cortical, quite voluntary. We move slowly. Why? We need to move slowly to give our voluntary motor cortex and sensory cortex time to reorganize our movement patterns. And the time allows the motor cortex to course correct. So we have a goal, we have an aim, we're doing something in movement. Let's say we want to bring the opposite elbow towards the opposite knee. And as we do it, maybe we're bringing the elbow to the same knee, but we're going slowly, we're paying attention, we're going, wait, I have to course correct. I've got to get that elbow more, okay, I've got to get it more diagonally pointed toward our knee. So when we go slowly, our motor cortex can course correct. The cerebellum cannot course correct. Cerebellum, we're doing things at normal speed. There's just not time, and that's not what that part of the brain does. We move with awareness. We move with awareness so that the sensory and motor cortex, especially the motor cortex, like I said, it can course correct, but it can also, with this awareness, allows us to experience ourselves musculoskeletally, sensorially, spatially, and when possible, going slowly helps us to catch ourselves in dysfunctional patterns or patterns that maybe are kind of uncomfortable and we didn't realize it, because when we just move quickly, our brain is very good at substituting activities and we just gloss right over it. So moving slowly is important. We have many of us have a lot of dysfunctional patterns. Sometimes we realize it and sometimes we don't realize it. For example, maybe we excessively roll our feet in and out, in or out when we walk. Maybe we swing one arm or one leg much more than the other arm. Some people don't swing their arms hardly at all. Maybe we constantly tuck our pelvis. No pelvis tucking. Your tail goes down toward the center of the earth with gravity. And I'll be kind of harping on that as we go through this class and the next class. No tail tucking. We also don't want excessive hyperextension or excessive curl, no tail tucking, and no opposite. Sometimes when we move slowly, we can catch ourselves being very stiff, like maybe as we're walking and we've practiced some sub-programs where we really are rotating our rib cage, we go back and walk and we realize, oh, I just went into normal walking and I'm not moving my rib cage. So going slowly helps us to tune into dysfunctional patterns that we have. We aim for comfort without excessive force when we do our movements. And I just want to say, it's kind of anti-American to move slowly and move in comfort and move without excessive force. We tend to push ourselves as a culture. There's all kinds of things, like if we don't have pain, we're not doing anything. We are not in training for a marathon in this class. That is not what somatic movement is about. What you practice, your brain learns. If you move in pain, your brain is going to learn how to move in pain. So you want to back away from pain. You want to back away from discomfort. You want to do the movement smaller and smaller until you can find a comfortable place to do that movement. And if you can't find that, you work with your imagination. I also want to mention, we want to follow medical directives. Many of you may have medical conditions and you've been given certain medical directives. Please follow them. Okay. So we want a nice, healthy gait, healthy fluid gait, and that can become problematic due to injury, fear of falling, our changing physiology as we get older, motor sensory amnesia. Motor sensory amnesia is our term for, it's usually caused by overly contracted, chronically contracted muscles that cause postural and functional imbalances as we move. So today our focus is going to be to differentiate and improve sub-patterns of walking using our voluntary motor and sensory cortex. And then we're going to give it back to the cerebellum, and we're going to let the cerebellum take over. And then when we go to walk, we're walking with improved motor programs, and hopefully we feel at greater ease, greater movement, greater vitality, greater stamina, and all those things that come with improved patterns. So that is my introduction for our class. Let's make our way to the floor. Move your chair out of the way, but maybe at the ready, because we'll come back to it after our floor movements. I'm going to limit the floor movements so that we have time to start getting into the standing and walking movements. Isaiah, would you tell me in 25 minutes? Okay, I'm not quite sure of timing, but I'm gonna, Isaiah, my tech person, thank goodness, is here, and he'll help me keep track of time. So again, you want to be free and easy, pillows to support head and knees as you need them, probably glasses off and out of the way, but at the ready for if you need them again when we stand and walk. So as you get yourself comfortable and lie down on the floor now, on your back, you want to let yourself sink into the support below you. You may have a pillow or some kind of support below your head. You may have something below your knees. That's completely up to you. And as you feel the support below you, maybe think a little bit about your walking. What if you had to walk about an hour? That's usually about 3 hours for a moderate walk, 20-minute mile. So that's about 3 miles in an hour is quite common. What if you were walking for an hour? What would you experience in your body? Would you have aches and pains after a half a mile, after a block, after 2 miles? Would you feel pretty good, but more fatigue than you wanted to feel? Would you develop pain, or do you have a tendency to have pain in one side of your back or in one of your hips? Or what about your feet? A lot of people have a lot of issues with their feet, and they can walk a little bit, but not too much. So you want to just keep that in mind so that as we go through some of the floor movements we do today, and we'll continue this next month, notice if that would be a good movement for you to memorize and do in your daily movement. Okay. Let's start with our arch and flatten movement. We'll start with it pendicularly so I can describe that. You bend your knees. Usually I like to do it one at a time with your feet standing on the floor. And keeping your buttocks on the floor, you're going to inhale and gently let your lower back, low back at the waist lift a little bit. So you're rolling towards your tailbone as you inhale. As you exhale, you're slowly decontracting and coming back to neutral. That's the arch part. So in pendiculation, we contract and slowly decontract. And now in the flatten, we find an exhale. Inhale to exhale, we contract our abdominal muscles and roll our pelvis towards our chest a little bit. That's rocking our pelvis in the opposite direction. Our low back comes closer to the floor. As we continue to breathe, we release the contraction in the abdominal muscles. And as you practice your arch and flatten, you can convert from a pure pendiculation to a slow flow where you notice the transitions. So you'll inhale and arch, rolling towards your tailbone. Your low back will lift a little bit. You'll exhale, you'll release the back. You'll slowly go into a flatten with your belly contracted, pelvis rocking opposite. As you continue to breathe, you'll move your slow flow through the transition to arching, etc. And most of my people are not new, and new people, if you have confusion, I will stay after class and help you understand confusion, but just keep coming to classes and or watch my videos, my YouTubes, or go to my website, and you can watch them as much as you want. But we're pretty used to arch and flatten. So now we're going to continue arch and flatten, but we're going to warm up our arms and shoulders by, as we arch, we'll let our arms roll outward, our shoulder blades go backward and toward each other, our scapulas. And as we exhale and flatten, we transition from coming out of that contraction to flatten and rolling our arms and shoulders inward. And we continue the slow flow of the arch and flatten with arm rolling. So we start to bring in our arms and shoulders. Complete the one you're in the midst of on a flatten. So flatten, arms roll in and relax. We take periodic little relaxation interludes. The sensory feedback from the movements you've been doing is still continuing to swirl through your body and from your body to your brain and back for feedback. Okay, now you're going to leave one leg long and bend one leg. Our working leg is the long leg, and we're going to combine arch and flatten with plantar and dorsiflexion. You can go ahead if you understand it. Let me guide you if you're not sure. As you inhale and arch the foot of your long leg, you're going to point that foot and toes. That's called plantar flexion. Do it carefully so you don't cramp. And as you exhale, you'll release to neutral and continue to exhale, contract for flatten, and gently dorsiflex by bringing your foot and toes towards your kneecap. And as you begin to inhale, you slowly release out of flatten and dorsiflexion and transition into arch and plantar flexion, pointing your foot and toes. And as you start to exhale, you start decontracting out of arch and plantar flexion and move into flexion and dorsiflexion. Flatten and dorsiflexion, and just gently go back and forth, slow flow. Pay attention to how your foot feels as you do your arch and flatten. Notice if you begin to cramp, back away from that. Complete the one you're on, complete on a flatten, so your back is long and you're relaxing out of flatten and dorsiflexion, and trade your legs. And we'll repeat. As you inhale and gently arch your lower back, rolling towards your tailbone, you'll point the foot of the long leg, your other foot. And then as you exhale, you'll slowly decontract. As you continue to exhale, you'll flatten your back gently as you dorsiflex, bringing your toes and foot towards your kneecap. So just do everything slowly. Do it with as much awareness as you can. I know I'm not going super slowly or taking as long a time as I often take with myself, but we're doing these movements for warm up so that we can say hello to the different parts of our body, refresh some sub-programs, and then we'll get into standing and walking. Complete the one you're in the midst of on a flatten, so your back stays long, although you'll relax out of that, and your foot relaxes out of dorsiflexion. And we'll take a brief sensory interlude. You can rest in any position of comfort. You might begin to notice you're actually sinking deeper into the support below you. And we're going to move into arch and curl. So one leg at a time, bend your legs. If it's comfortable, bring your hands behind your head. You'll have to organize yourself if you have a bum shoulder. Don't go into pain. And now we're going to do, we're going to grow the arch and flatten. And as your elbows are sticking out, as you inhale and arch, let's do a full spinal extension. head back, chin slightly up, elbows back if you can. You're moving into a gentle arch. And as you exhale and curl, you let go of the arch. Your elbows come closer to your head. Your hand helps lift your head. Your belly, your abdominal muscles are contracting. Your pubic bone and chest are coming closer together. And then you're going to continue to breathe and slowly transition out of the curl to neutral, through neutral, and find an arch. Arching is done on an inhale. If you can coordinate with breath. If breath is confusing, just move into the arch. And then you'll slowly transition out of the arch, decontracting to neutral, through neutral, to curl. And we're going to start adding extra hip flexion one leg at a time. So choose one of your legs. It doesn't matter if it's right or left. Your arch will remain your arch, full spinal extension. But on your next curl, as your elbows come toward each other, bring one of your designated knees, one of your knees towards your elbow to flex more at the hip. You'll slowly come out of that. Both knees are bent. Both knees are bent. And then you'll arch, and on your next curl, you'll alternate and you'll bring your other knee towards your elbows, flexing more at the hip. So we're going to go back and forth, alternating with greater hip flexion, which means your knee is coming closer to your chest, so your hip is contracting even more into flexion. And we're just adding a little extra flexion, very important sub-program of walking, continuing with our spinal focus, where our spine is flexing and extending, arching is extending, curling is flexing. Continue the one you're in the midst of so that you're even. You've done the same amount of repetitions, alternating from side to side with hip flexion, and take a movement interlude in any position of comfort. And we're going to work with the straight leg psoas movement. Your psoas is a muscle in the middle of your body, and in walking, it has a very important function. It brings your leg forward in walking. It is a hip function. Psoas has a hip function. It also relates to the low back. Your working leg will be long. Your other leg can be long or bent. What's tricky or challenging, what's challenging about psoas is go ahead and straighten one leg and designate it as your working leg. You are only going to lift your straight leg not more than 2 inches. That is challenging, not 6 inches, not 12 inches, not whipping your leg up, but slowly raising it, not more than 2 inches, and then very slowly setting that straight leg back down, decontracting out of the psoas on whatever side your active leg is. Come to full stop, relaxation, and repeat. You'll repeat until I call the next move. Some people will only do maybe 2 repetitions. Some people may do more. You want to stay conscious. If this is hurting your back away, do it in your imagination. It's a very important move. But it's not to be done in pain, or you're teaching yourself to use your psoas in pain. Complete the one you're in the midst of without rushing. Come to a complete stop. And now your other leg will be your working leg. It's up to you whether, so your working leg will be long, your other leg can be long or bent. And once again, you're going to be raising your straight leg not more than 2 inches. And then very slowly let your leg come down to complete stop, to complete rest. And you'll repeat as you're able till I call the next move. The psoas is a very important function. It brings the leg forward in walking. And we're going to turn onto one of our sides. We're going to be doing both sides. You get to choose which side you'd like to work with first. You want a pillow for under your head. I think you're going to be way more comfortable because we're going to be on our side for a while. And it's going to just sort of free up your shoulder won't, when you, it's fine to use an arm under your head, but after a while, sometimes that people don't like the way that feels on their shoulder. So pillow under your head. We'll start in a basic chair position with your knees bent at about 90 degrees to the hips and the knees at 90 degrees to the ankles. So you can just see or almost see your toes. And we're going to start with abduction. This is a very important function in walking. Take your top hand and the open palm and put it right on the side of your pelvis between your waist and your hip, right on your side. Your open palm, not at the waist, below your waist, between your waist and your hip. So you're on the side of your pelvis. Now, that's where your gluteus medius and minimus live. And Tom Hanna especially used the gluteus medius as an extremely important reference muscle. And so this is going to be for the function of abduction. You may be able to feel the abductors, especially gluteus medius, which is more superficial, contract. You're going to straighten your top leg straight down under you. So not forward, not backward, straight down under you. And you're going to gently lift your top leg. You don't have to lift it that far. See if you feel the contraction both under your hand and internally, and slowly bring your leg back down. If you want to slightly rest your leg in between, you can just let your knee bend right in place. But then after you come out of that and completely relax and stop, you're going to repeat that. This is abduction. This is very important for side-to-side balance when we walk. Abduction, and then slowly come down. Now, move your hand up to your oblique area right at the waist. Now you're going to be between your waist on the side, your iliac crest, and your ribs, the meat of the muscle, the obliques. And what you're going to do, we're going to grow abduction into lateral flexion. It's a hip hiking move. So, and you'll be able to feel it. We just don't have enough hand to do abduction and obliques. So I'm going to encourage obliques at this point. You're going to straighten your top leg. You're going to start lifting your top leg and keep lifting it some and hike your hip towards your armpit, towards your top armpit. So your ribs will squeeze a little bit. Now you're abducting with lateral flexion and slowly come down. Very important for our side-to-side balance. A lot of people lurch from side to side in walking. And you're going to repeat that. You're just going to take your straight leg. You're going to go through abduction. You're continuing to abduct, but you're also going to hike that hip up towards your armpit. The ribs will squeeze a little bit. So you're combining abduction and hip hiking lateral flexion. And then slowly come down. And we're going to add to this again. So you're going to, instead of doing our regular lateral flexion with our knee bent, with our top knee bent, we're going to do it with a long leg. So if it's comfortable, bring your hand over the top of your head towards your the ear of the bottom of the bottom of your head facing the floor. You don't have to get that far because your hand is going to help lift your head. If that's not comfortable for your arm, just leave your arm down at your side. And now what you're going to do is you're going to bring your straight leg up to hip height and bring your armpit down, raise your head, let your hand help raise your head. So your armpit and hip are coming together, but you're doing it with a straight abducted leg and lateral flexion, and then slowly come down. And you're going to go ahead and do that one more time. And slowly come down. When you are down, stack your knees again so they can rest. Bring your arm down. And we are going to work with upper trunk. That means your ribs orienting from your breastbone or sternum and the upper part of your somatic center. But I'm going to reference this from the ribs because ribs are what people often don't move. And will include our arm. You're going to place the palm of your top hand, palm open, place it half on your ribs, half on your belly, not all the way at your side, but just a little forward of your side. Your fingers are going to point down towards your knees. Now, please listen carefully. You're going to take your rib cage. You can focus on your breastbone. Your head and neck is going to go with your chest, and you are going to rotate, turn your rib cage down toward the floor. Slide your hand, your open palm, across your belly onto the floor. Reach with your hand comfortably along the floor as you continue to turn in comfort, rotate in comfort your rib cage and face. And then you're going to retrace yourself. You're going to start at the rib cage. Start turning the rib cage more backward, which will start sliding your arm across the floor, across your belly, back to where you started. Let's do that again. Turn your rib cage and face down toward the floor. Slide your hand across your belly on the floor, gently reaching with your arm. Your rib cage is turned toward the floor and your face is also. And now start turning your rib cage backward, which gives momentum to your hand to start sliding across the floor, across your belly to your start position where your elbow is bent, your hand is back, half on the ribs, half on the belly, and start to rotate your rib cage and spine backward. You're rotating backward, your chest is opening more to the ceiling, your face is opening more to the ceiling. Your bent arm, your elbow is bringing your arm backward. Some people even like to open their arm backward. Don't hurt your shoulder. You don't have to open up your arm as your bent arm travels backward, but you can if you want. If you've opened up your arm, bend it again. With your rib cage slide, rotate forward, starting at your rib cage, and then slide your palm across your belly, across the floor to reach as you continue to rotate your chest, your rib cage, your face. And then slowly start to bring your rib cage backward, which starts your arm moving across the floor, across your belly. Continue to turn your rib cage, rotate your rib cage backward so that your chest is more toward the ceiling, your face is more toward the ceiling, your bent arm goes backward. It's up to you if you want to open it. And you are now rotating forward and backward your rib cage in and arm. You can continue. As your rib cage rotates towards the floor, and that's the forward position, that's what's in walking, that's what allows your arm that's what programs your arm to be the forward arm swing. As your rib cage starts turning backward and your arm starts and shoulders start going backward, that's what programs and gives the impetus for your arm to swing backward. It is coming from the organization of your spine and trunk. In this case, we're working with upper trunk rib cage. And make your way back to neutral. Ooh, we're getting close, aren't we? That's 25 minutes. Okay. Well, we're gonna continue. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the lower body. So this is a walking sub program. It is the rotation in the trunk that allows the arms and legs to swing with greater freedom and ease. So now what happens in the pelvis, lower trunk, and the lower half of the somatic center? Reduce the angle of your knees. So instead of at a 90 degree, you're at about 45 degrees. You just push your feet back and down a little bit. Okay, and now what you're going to do is now we're going to focus on the pelvis rotating forward and backward, and notice what that does to the leg organization. So as you take your pelvis and you start rotating it toward, don't worry about your upper body, just let it do whatever it wants. Don't hold back. As your pelvis starts rotating toward the floor, that is forward, let your knee, your top thigh and knee, lengthen a little forward, but also up, and your thigh and knee may come off your bottom knee or start to come off your bottom knee. If you need to have a pillow in front, I should have said that, so that some people like to bring their knee bring your knee off your thigh if you can, kind of both forward and up. You might need a pillow under your knee for comfort. And you're going to take your knee closer to your chest and curl your spine. Now, as you start uncurling your spine, your pelvis starts to rotate backward. That's what starts bringing your top bent leg backward and start to straighten your top leg backwards. And you may get to straight, you may not, but it's the pelvis going backward that takes your bent leg back towards straight or to straight. Now, your pelvis starts going forward. That's what starts to bend your knee in this position, forward, on top of the other knee, forward and toward the floor, and up towards your chest to curl your spine. Now in your pelvis starts rotating backward. That starts taking your top leg backward. You start straightening your top leg behind you. Maybe you get to straight, maybe you don't. And you're going back and forth. The lead is the pelvis, not the leg. The lead is the pelvis. It's programming you. When your pelvis is rotating forward, that's the forward leg in walking. When your pelvis is rotating backward, that's the backward leg in walking. It's not quite in the complete walking pattern, but this is a sub program. When you're going forward, your spine is more in a curl. When you're going backward, you're more in an erect or green light, not over hyperextended, but a little bit, and very erect, so that your spine is always programming your trunk, and the different parts of your trunk, your rib cage, somatic center, and pelvis are all playing a role. And now we're going to put that together. So come back to neutral. And your upper body and lower body are going to go in opposite directions. Contralateral. Okay. Get ready. Think in your mind. Think rib cage forward, pelvis turning backward. Okay. Go ahead and do it. Your hand is on your belly, belly rib cage. Okay. As your rib cage rotates forward, your pelvis rotates backward, your top arm goes across your belly and onto the floor. Your legs start straightening behind you. Then you're going to reverse that. Your rib cage starts going backward, your pelvis starts going forward, your arm starts bending again across the floor, belly to behind you, your chest opens, your pelvis goes forward, your top thigh and knee go forward and more into a curl. And see if you can. The important thing here is that your rib cage and pelvis, hopefully in comfort, you can do it as small as you need to do it. This is what walking is about. We're on whatever side you're on, opposite the, when you're on the same side, your arm and leg are going in opposite directions because your rib cage and pelvis are going in opposite directions, and your somatic center is negotiating the transition. Complete the one you are in the midst of and turn over onto your other side. I hope some of you play this tape again because I know that was quick, and this is such a great move. You want to put this in your daily routine a couple times, 2-3 times a week. Okay, let's start with chair position for our knees, ankles under the knees. Ankle, so you can almost see your toes. Good. All right, we're going to start with abduction. Take your top palm, put it right on the side of your pelvis between your waist and your hip joint. So you're on the pelvis, not above it, below the waist, and you're going to straighten your top leg and you're going to abduct. You're going to bring your top leg up away from the floor a certain amount and slowly let it come back down. Abduction, gluteus medius as our reference muscle. See if you can feel it from outside with your hand and inside from your internal sensations. And you'll repeat. And with your next abduction, move your hand to your oblique area, your waist area on the side between your iliac crest and ribs on the side. And as you abduct, raise your leg. Also hip hike, might raise your leg a little bit more, hiking your hip towards your armpit. Now you're combining abduction with lateral flexion. Very important move for side to side balance. And then you'll slowly come down and you'll repeat. You'll abduct into lateral flexion hip hiking. You can palpate the obliques if you want, that's up to you. And with your next movement, bring your hand over your head towards the ear on the floor. You don't have to get that far. And now with a straight leg, we're going to do lateral flexion. Your armpit and hip come closer together. Your straight leg lifts. Your armpit comes down, which raises your head. Adjust for shoulder and head neck comfort. And now you're doing your lateral flexion with a straight leg. This is a really good variation for a walking sub program. Your ribs are squeezing on one side. There's a phase in walking where your leg takes full weight of the ground. And this is what this lateral flexion abduction, this is what happens. And then you go through the phases of walking, and then your other leg takes full weight on the ground, hopefully full weight. And this is a version of what happens. Stay in your comfort zone. And please complete the one you're in the midst of. And come back into the chair position, arm down. And we're going to move into the rotation of the rib cage and upper somatic center, but I'll use rib cage. Your head and neck will come along, your face will go with your rib cage. Your open palm on the sort of side, a little to the front, half on your ribs, half on your belly. I like to start this on an exhale and then I just breathe. Inhale to exhale. You're using your external obliques to rotate. Your rib cage and face are turning forward toward the floor. Your hand is going across your belly onto the floor. So you're reaching with your arm as your rib cage and face continue to turn just to comfort. And then you start in the rib cage. The rib cage starts turning backwards, so your chest starts coming more toward the ceiling. Your arm retraces the floor and belly. Your arm bends at the elbow. Your chest and face start being more up toward the ceiling. Your bent arm, elbow go backward. It's up to you if you want to open your arm. Just be careful of your shoulder. No hurting. Please don't hurt yourself. When you're ready to turn forward, you start in the rib cage and actually somatic center starts turning forward. That programs this backward arm to start going forward. And as you come forward, your arm bends, your palm goes across your belly. As you continue to turn your rib cage and face forward, you reach with your arm. This is the forward arm because your rib cage has turned forward. Now your rib cage starts turning backward. You slide your arm across floor and belly. Your rib cage and face are more forward. Your elbow and arm behind you. It's up to you if you want to open. And you are rotating your rib cage forward and backward, which programs the arm. If you're rotating forward, it programs the arm to swing forward. If you are rotating your rib cage backward, it is programming your arm to swing backward. I wish we had more time, but I'm going to have you finish the one you're in the midst of so we can go to the lower body. This feels really good if you do it in comfort, and it's real important for rib cage movement. So many of us have stiff rib cages, and now we want easeful, fluid, moving rib cages. Okay, pelvis. Now we're going to program the pelvis. Lower your legs to about a 45-degree angle. It's much easier. We're going to go forward first with the pelvis. As you start to rotate your pelvis forward, your top thigh and knee slide forward and up. They may even slide all the way to the ground, but you might need a pillow to support your knee so you're comfortable. And you're going to actually curl your spine more as you bring your knee towards your chest. Now you're going to start turning your pelvis backward. That's going to start bringing your bent leg backward and start straightening your bent leg behind you. You may get to full straight, you may not. When you are ready to bring your pelvis forward, you bring your pelvis forward. It starts programming the leg. We're going to go ahead as our pelvis comes forward toward the floor. We're going to allow our knee to bend. We're going to start moving a little bit more in a curl in our spine, a flexion in our spine. We're sliding our top thigh and knee both forward and up toward our chest. Your top thigh and knee, top knee may come off, slide off your bottom thigh and knee. You start programming your pelvis to start turning backward. That starts bringing your leg backward. Your leg starts opening up backward behind you. You may get to a straight leg behind you. The important part is the pelvic rotation. Start combining this move with the upper body. Upper and lower body are going to go in opposite directions. Pelvis and rib cage in opposite directions. So I don't know what phase you're on. If your rib cage is going forward, your pelvis is going backward. If your rib cage is going forward, your arm is sliding across your body and reaching across the floor. Your leg is coming behind you and straightening. Then you would reverse that. If your rib cage is going backward, your pelvis is going forward, and it's bringing your arm and leg along as we practiced. Since everybody is at a different place, I hope I've given instruction enough for you to follow through. The important thing for you to feel and really put your awareness into is the opposition between your rib cage and your pelvis. That's programming your arm and leg. Your somatic center is negotiating the transition from upper to lower body contralateral movement. This is contralateral movement done on your side. One side, your top side, is in a contralateral movement pattern. Complete the one you're in the midst of and come onto your back and rest. Come onto your back and rest. That's going to end our floor movement today. Just give yourself a moment. Feel the support below you. Perhaps you've sunk into the floor even more. Maybe you feel longer and broader, more open. And now we're going to make our way to standing. So this is where you may want a chair at the ready. You're not going to start in a chair. You're going to start in standing, but don't have a chair too far away. We'll see how far we get. Would you tell me, Isaiah, in 15 minutes? Okay. So you're going to come to standing. Now, this is where you may want your glasses on. If you are used to standing and walking with your glasses on, then you want them on. If you're used to not having them on, then they're off. Okay, but I need to, okay, I'm going to try to adjust my screen. You can always pin yourself. You can look at me or you can pin yourself. You'll be able to see some of me do the movements. I'm going to flip off my slippers and because I haven't been on the floor. You want to be in socks or bare feet, so you really give your body a chance to feel your feet. And you're going to come to standing. And here are a few cues for standing in alignment. First off, you don't want to over effort in any of these. You want to go to your central axis, your spine, and you want your spine to be vertical. Your tailbone is down, no tucking, no tucking. Okay, so the alignment points that I like to use are middle of the crown of the head. If you know your uvula at the back of your throat, it's that little thing that sticks down, it's in alignment. Crown of the head, uvula to the center of the pelvic floor. That gives you verticality. Your tailbone is down. See if you feel or you can equalize the weight between your two legs and feet. Maybe you realize they're not equal. That's a realization. That's fine. You're looking for where you are more efficiently organized and where you need to work with it. So you want, how much of your feet do you feel? Do you feel both heels, the balls of both feet? Do you feel all your toe pads without squeezing your toes into the floor? Are you more on the insides or outsides of your feet, or heels or balls? We'll spend more time with some of this other stuff in another class, but we're just doing a general alignment exercise. Now, here's a really important activity. Check your knees. If you are a person that hyperextends your knees, you need to start inhibiting that pattern. Hyperextended knees, we can all do it, but don't hurt yourself. So you push your knees back. So go ahead and do that. Push your knees back. Feel what it does. Feel what it does in the pelvis and the chest. And then let that go. Here's how you get out of it. You do a very small bend in your knees, come to a soft straight. Feel that again. No hyperextension, but this is what hyperextension does. Go into it slowly and feel how it stiffens your body and it puts your pelvis and your rib cage in a not a good position. And then your head and neck has to figure out how to be, quote, comfortable. It's very not good for posture, hyperextended knees. So you get out of that many times a day. You just do a little bit of a bend, come to a soft straight. You don't know what a soft straight is if you hyperextend your knees, but you know you're not hyperextending them. You know you're not going to go into that pattern, something less. So that's our first activities, is to start to learn to inhibit hyperextended knees. Okay, very good. Now, we're going to do what I call a course. Now just take a little bit of a walk. We just did a little bit of alignment. We worked a little bit with our knees. You're just going to take what I call a la-di-da walk, because you're after we do some activities, I don't have much room at all in where I am in my house, but he'll take a little walk. The walking will help you to integrate what you've just learned. Are you walking nice and upright without forcing it? Can your head and neck look around? Is your tailbone down, or did you tuck it? No tucking. No hyperextension, no tucking of the tail. Your tail is going down to the center of the earth, to our iron core. And come back. Okay. Now, we're going to work with the propulsion leg. The back leg. So what you want to do, let me see if I can. Okay, I'm going to, you'll see at least, I wish it was, okay, that's better. Okay, hands on your buttocks, and bring one leg a little forward, one leg a little back. Not a big step, just a little bit. Your backward leg is your propulsion leg. What you want to do is you want to start leaning forward so that you come on, you want to come onto the ball of your backward foot, and you want to move into a push off, and you want to feel the gluteal muscles under that leg, the gluteal muscles of that leg, you want to feel them contract. Bring that leg forward, and now your other leg is your propulsion leg, and you want to feel as you come into, as you come into the push off the balls of your feet towards your toes. You want to feel the activation all the way up that leg into your gluteal muscles, And you want to take a little walk. You might go off screen, that's fine. And what you want to do is exaggerate propulsion, exaggerate the push off, and feel those gluteal muscles activate, contract. A lot of people have what we call sleepy glutes. They don't activate the glutes. If you're not activating the glutes, you're not getting a push off, and it's the push off that erects your body. It tells your body to go up, erect your body, it goes up. So you want to just walk a little, you'll have to go a little more slowly and really feel the propulsion back leg coming into push off, ball to towards toes. And now you may pick up some toe tightness. You may pick up some pain and discomfort. but working with the propulsive back leg is very, very important to walking. And your glutes should take turns, turning on as you propulse, and then turning off as that propulsion leg, it becomes the forward leg. Those glutes turn off, the other glutes turn on as the other leg becomes the propulsion leg. It's a great exercise to do and to teach your clients, especially red light clients. So come back to your computer or come back to your screen, maybe pull a chair for just a moment, take a little chair interlude. And I just want to demonstrate a little bit how so many people have sleepy glutes. If you are a more red light person, you're often kind of tucked and you're a little bent this way, and you kind of walk. Okay, I can't see my feet. Let me see if I can make this. Okay, so you're kind of tucked right there. When you tuck, you can't propulse. You're a little tucked, you're a little rounded. And what happens is you kind of don't get any push off and you don't get any activation in your glutes. You have sleepy glutes. When you see a no butt person, they probably have sleepy glutes. They haven't developed their gluteal muscles. Okay, that's a really important aspect. Okay, let me just see what I want to do next. Ah, good. Want to work a little bit with the eyes, and we can actually start in the chair. Our eyes are extremely important in organizing movement. We are a very visual animal, and people that are blind develop other senses to a very high extent. Those of us that have sight, we're lucky we have sight, we're very visual. Our visual system looks for horizontals and verticals in nature, and as we are in buildings and walking along, because that helps to orient us. That's how we evolved. And the position of your head and where your gaze is, it does a lot of things. I'm going to just talk about a couple of them. One is your neck posture. Now, I'm a short person, and whether it's because I'm a more green light or arched person, or because I'm short, I have a tendency to look up. That's a bad habit. That's a habit I want to inhibit and correct. And I do and I don't. I do my best, like we all do with our habits. But when you're hyperextended, your back of your neck is contracted. And therefore, I walk around and I have a more upward gaze. I'm learning to keep the back of my neck short. And so what I need to learn to do, and some people look down all the time, and now they are overcontracted and short in the front. And then they can't see very much because they're looking down. The position of your gaze tells you where your neck is. Now, we want freedom in our neck to look around and to look up and to look down, but our default position should be eyes on the horizon. So an Alexander technique is they say, look down and then come up to the horizon. And that's a really good exercise to do, whether you're an up looker or a down looker. You go intentionally down and back up to horizon, you find your horizon line. And it's not easy when you're used to looking up or used to looking down. You have to learn where horizon is, and you just have to start training yourself. Maybe you can start looking for a horizontal that will help you do that. Position of the eye gaze, position of the neck. The other thing about eye gaze is when you're used to looking either up or looking down, your eyelids have been programmed to where they have to, where they're used to being. When you look on the horizon, you often have to learn to open your eyes. You have your whole eye programming has to change. So because I'm an up looker more, when I looked on the horizon, something was wrong. And then somebody helped me with it and told me, what you've got to open your eyes. And I had to relearn that was a habit I'd learned, to not fully have my eyes open, because of when I looked up, my lids, it was just all a programming I had done. So we've got these ramifications that are pretty interesting. The other thing about eyes is, and the computer, is almost all of us have long hours at the computer now, and our head starts going forward, our neck is in hyperextension. And the other thing about the computer screen is it sucks you in, and our vision is going out into our field of vision. And what we want to start doing is not only looking down, find the horizon, get back to vertical in your chair, get back to vertical, but you also want your field to come into you. You don't want to put effort into going into pushing your eyes out. That's a position of stress. You want your field of vision to come into you, no matter if you're walking, or we're going to walk in a moment, or looking at a computer screen, or out in nature. You don't want this forceful, stressful eye out. You want the field to come into you. Now, we're also going to talk about focused vision versus peripheral vision. We can do this in a chair. It's actually a nice thing to do as well from a computer. So focus on, if you're looking at yourself, fine. Focus on yourself as a kind of a pinpoint focus, and just do that for a few seconds. And now broaden your vision to your peripheral vision, side to side. How much of your room, or wherever you are, how much of you can you see from each side and below you? We're going to practice this in standing in a moment. So peripheral vision tends to broaden your personal space. It actually is very stabilizing. Pinpointing your vision brings your personal space in. It narrows you, and it narrows you in a sense of also less grounded, less stable. So stand up. You don't have to look at the computer screen. Stand up and find something in your room and just focus on it for a few seconds. Feel that your focus is narrowed. It narrows your personal space. And now go to your peripheral vision and notice what you can notice. You can probably notice more standing up. Notice as much as you can notice. There's a little bit of upward peripheral vision, but there's a lot of lower peripheral vision. You can learn to look ahead, include your whole peripheral vision, side to side and below you, and you can see quite far ahead of you. Like if you're out walking on a sidewalk in Berkeley, where I live, the sidewalks are terrible. They're cracked, they're bumps, the roots of trees are coming up, there's divots, there's every possible bad thing about a sidewalk could possibly happen. We have to be careful here. And so learning to use my peripheral vision from the side and below. And then as I walk and I know I'm coming to a place where the sidewalk is really uneven, I can just gently look down a little, negotiate it, and again, bring my eyes, default position back to the horizon, but I can look around, but I know where my default horizon is. So what we're going to do now is you're going to walk around, and as you walk around, you want to practice three things, and I'll tell you again. Narrow vision, then we'll go to peripheral vision, and then we'll go to both. Can you focus and learn to use your peripheral vision? Can you have focus vision and peripheral vision? So go ahead and walk around and see if you can start maybe with a focused vision. You're walking towards something in your house. You can go out of the screen, it's fine. And just feel what that does to your personal space. Can you kind of feel it pulling in your personal space? And now, and you might have to change directions and all that. Now include your peripheral vision. Let your peripheral vision, really pay attention to what you're looking at from side to side and below you. See if you can expand your personal space and see if that doesn't expand your sense of safety and grounding as well. And now see if you can do both. Can you do focused vision and peripheral vision at the same time? This is a really nice way to go out and take a walk and to be in nature. And then, of course, if you want to look at that bird or look at that flower or look at that building, then you can go back to focused vision, and then you can come back out to focused and peripheral vision, and you can find your default horizon for your eyes. Okay, I know I'm getting the signal. Okay, we're coming to the end of class for today. So let's take one more walk. And as we walk, I'm just going to say a few things about some of the things we did today. So you want to walk, and a great phrase is walk with dignity. Think about dignity. Think about your person with just dignity. You're not holding yourself, but it just opens you up. It makes you walk tall. You've got good spinal alignment as you're walking. Your tail is hanging down. You're not tucking your tail. You're walking with dignity. You're upright. Your knees are comfortable. Put some fluffy clouds around your knees to soften your knees. We'll get back to that next month. You want to visualize, use your visualization to have a fluid, flowing, healthy gait, a vital gait. Adjust your stride for comfort and for your space. In a room, you usually have a smaller stride, but a lot of people try to walk with too much of a stride and they're uncomfortable. It's not good for their hips. Comfortable stride. You want to think about your propulsive leg just a little bit, because we practice that. Go into a kind of a sub program for propulsive leg. Come back to la-di-da. You still may be able to incorporate the propulsive leg, but think about your peripheral vision and your focused vision. See if you can focus and do peripheral vision all at the same time. See if that grows your personal space, your sense of safety, and your sense of groundedness and sense of fluidity. And that is where we're going to end class today. I will stay after class and have discussion for anybody who can stay and wants to. And I'm going to turn off the recording now. So thank you very much. Thank you for today's class. We'll continue this next month.